Good afternoon and welcome to News Blitz on ZTN. Let's take a look at our top stories. Police blame airport authorities for minerals leakages. Health experts speak on Indian variant. Tobayo Mdede in the dock for theft. And in sport, SRC signs memorandum of agreement with the National Prosecuting Authority. Smuggling of minerals, especially gold, out of Zimbabwe has become a topical issue lately as the nation targets to have a $12 billion mining industry by 2023. Statistics recently published by the Chronicle indicate that at least $100 million worth of gold is smuggled out of the country every month. And if other minerals such as diamond are added to the list, the Southern African country could be losing billions of dollars in revenue annually. But who really is to blame for the smuggling? Police Commissioner General Godwin Matanga and Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Home Affairs Aaron Nepara attempted to respond to this question as they presented oral evidence in Parliament on Thursday morning. In his presentation, Secretary Nepara revealed that collusion between agencies and criminals at the borders were making it easy for minerals to be smuggled out.
The other challenges, honourable members, include the porousness of our borderline, which makes it difficult to effectively police even with optimal deployment under the present circumstances of limited resources. In addition, the current mining legal framework appears to be fraught with loopholes that are being manipulated by criminals.
Police Commissioner General Godwin Matanga said the police has given limited access at airports. He believes that this is fueling smuggling.
I would want to mention to the House that it is very unfortunate that at our international airport, the Civil Aviation Authority of Zimbabwe, CAS, are these people who are providing security at the airport. They have got what they call aviation security, or AVSEC. There are some parts of this airport where ZTRP officers are not allowed to patrol. And as head of police, I would want to believe that these are the areas being used by criminals to smuggle out gold.
He also gave a detailed explanation on how 14 kilograms of gold were recently smuggled out of the country from the Robert Mugabe International Airport. The suspect was apprehended upon arrival in South Africa.
It was after the arrest of Mr. Masinire in South Africa by the South African Hawks when a communication came to us through Interpol that some 14 kgs of gold was intercepted at the OR International Airport in Joburg. And having received that information, our CID officials went to the airport and obviously made it possible to identify who was involved on this side of the border. And obviously this was done through the CCTV. And having gone through the CCTV, it was very clear that Mr. Masinire, on that particular morning, actually went through the airport clearance processes without any problems. But we also discovered that he was also holding on to an empty bag. After all the clearances, he went to the smoking room. And as he was going to the smoking room, one of the accused on our side, a Mr. Wunda, went into the airport. Maybe people thought he was on duty, but he is the man who was carrying the 14 kilograms of gold into the airport using the arrival route, which is not allowed in normal circumstances. As he got into the airport, he also went to the smoking room where the transaction took only 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, Mr. Hunda walked out of the smoking room and Mr. Masinire, his bag now looked full of gold, and he went as someone who had all the clearances in place. From there, he went straight into the aircraft, which then took off to Joburg. Maybe for now, that's the information which I can give the out.
Zimbabwe on Wednesday confirmed detecting cases of new coronavirus variant that emerged in India and was responsible for a surge in infections and deaths in the Asian country. The first case of the Indian variant was detected on Tuesday in Kwekwe, a city in the country's Midlands province. Zimbabwe is enforcing mandatory quarantine for all travelers from India. Public health experts who spoke to ZTN said Zimbabweans should observe the available COVID-19 protocol to avoid a rise in infections in the wake of this new variant.
It is important that the people of Zimbabwe should remain vigilant. It is also equally important that the authorities should enforce the regulations, especially the public gatherings, and also making sure that the general public adheres to all the regulations.
Zimbabwe Medical Association President Dr. Francis Chirowa also spoke on what needs to be done to contain the latest variant.
What we are saying is as soon as we identify somebody who is infected, they need to really be isolated, and everybody to be careful in terms of preventing infection from those people. Self-distancing, but of course, obviously, somebody. Isolation should really be isolation done properly, where there should be very minimal contact, and there should be obviously no movement from there, which can result in spread to other people. It's very important, especially with this virus that has been isolated in Kwekwe. I'm sure it must be there in other places, because they're already the only ones who traveled from India. Those Kwekwe people, there are others that did. So we ought to be very careful as a nation, otherwise we are going to be in serious trouble.
Now, there are concerns that the available vaccines may not be effective against the Indian variant of the COVID-19 virus. Our correspondent Mirain Singh spoke to WHO country representative Dr. Alex Gazasira, who allayed those fears.
And what is becoming more and more apparent, and you may be seeing this reported, is that most of the vaccines that we have that are being used now are really effective against all the circulating strains. Even if they may be slightly less effective compared to the original virus that was identified soon after the pandemic started, the level of effectiveness that they have against the emerging variants prevent against severe disease, prevent against hospitalization, prevent against death.
Still with health matters, Zimbabwe imported pharmaceutical products worth $188.7 million during 2020. This is according to the United Nations Comtrade database on international trade. Local production of the essential pharmaceutical products stands at 30%, while the market share of local pharmaceutical products is estimated at about 12%, while exports stand at about 10%. Cabinet recently approved the pharmaceutical manufacturing strategy, which seeks to, amongst other things, increase local production of essential medicines from $31.5 million to $150 million by 2025. Now, the strategy also aims to increase local production of essential medicines to 60% by 2025 and to improve exports of pharmaceutical products to 25% by 2025. The National Pharmaceutical Companies Zimbabwe's procurement agent for pharmaceutical products sees itself playing a critical role towards achieving the set targets in the pharmaceutical manufacturing strategy. ZTN spoke to NatPharm Acting Managing Director Ivan Dumba.
The critical contribution which NatPharm can then play is by assisting the local industries in sourcing the raw materials for the production of these medicines. These are called active pharmaceutical ingredients. These active pharmaceutical ingredients, we currently do not have the local capacity to produce them, and most of these obviously are patented. And with the extensive linkage which NatFarm has now created with international manufacturers, we are better placed to be able to bring in the active pharmaceutical ingredients and supply these to our local industries.
In the courts, former Registrar General Tobayo Mdede is currently in court on allegations of theft. The court heard that Mdede was involved in a boundary dispute with his neighbor, Jacqueline Mukanganyama, for several years, until Mdede sought the services of some police officers to intimidate Mukanganyama. This subsequently led to Mdede forcibly occupying the land, resulting in the complainant losing farming equipment worth 10,000 United States dollars. Now, we'll give you more detail as the day progresses. Zimbabwe's Justice Secretary Virginia Mabiza has said the country does not have a constitutional crisis. Mabiza was responding to claims by some sections that the recent ruling of the High Court, which nullified the extension of Chief Justice Luke Malaba's tenure, had plunged the country into a constitutional predicament. The Justice Secretary was speaking on the sidelines of a ceremony to swear in 5 Constitutional Court judges who were appointed by President Emmerson Mnangagwa yesterday. The 5 judges are Justices Paddington Garwe, Rita Makarau, Annie Mary Gowora, Bharat Patel and Ben Hlachwayo. Acting Chief Justice Elizabeth Gwaunza presided over the swearing-in ceremony. Our correspondent Munyara Zichamalimba spoke to Justice Secretary on the sidelines of the ceremony earlier today.
What we can see is not a constitutional crisis. Parties have brought their matter before the court. It is entirely up to the court, the institution to which the matter has been brought, to make a decision as to whether or not to preside or not. So there is no constitutional crisis at all. As you can see, the courts are functional, and today you have witnessed a very important activity in the judiciary. So no crisis.
Foreign Affairs and International Trade Minister Ambassador Frederick Shava is on a regional tour to introduce himself to his peers. He assumed his new position in April. His tour takes him to Namibia and South Africa. His first stop was in Botswana, where he met Dr. Lemogang Kwape and spoke about the importance of innovative education systems in the region.
Development hubs at all universities. And we've encouraged professors and lecturers to say you don't teach your students only to be able to repeat words. You teach them in order to be able to create, to innovate things.
On to business. The price of fuel in Zimbabwe remains amongst the highest in Africa. At present, a litre of petrol costs $1.33 and a litre of diesel is pegged at $1.32. In other African countries such as Angola, a litre of petrol costs 24 cents, one of the lowest in the continent, and in Namibia 88 cents per litre, Botswana 90 cents, Malawi $1.13, and in South Africa, the regional economic powerhouse, $1.20. Only Senegal has a higher price in Africa, with a litre of petrol pegged at $1.43. But why are fuel prices higher in Zimbabwe than most African countries? Zimbabwe Energy Regulatory Authority Chief Executive Officer Eddington Mazambani spoke to ZTN's Tawanda Bote.
If you look at our biggest economy in South Africa, prices are adjusted as and when there's a movement internationally. But, you then also have to look at like I said, that we import this product. Do we have capacity to absorb the price for a longer period than do it on a monthly review process? And we also have to take into account the fact that the prices are not only going upwards. So are we saying then we should be stuck with a higher price even if when the international prices are coming down? So as a country, we are a price taker and we react to these prices. But what we've then done, and we did this through a law, the SI2 event, I think of 2017, where we say on the 5th of every month, we look at the prices which obtained in the preceding month and then set the price for the following month.
In the arts, roots reggae exponent Trevor Hall, popularly known as Ras Jabu, and fellow crooners are set to dedicate this year's Africa Day celebrations towards fighting drug and substance abuse. He spoke to ZTN correspondent Monlisi Leya that this is a new cancer which needs urgent attention.
The main serious part of it is that we're doing it as a virtual festival and sending a serious message as reggae artists against drugs and substance abuse, and looking at ways of how we can assist our community, organizations and so forth in helping to rid this scourge. One of the main reasons also is that the artists are usually the ones who fingers are actually pointed at as the main influencers for abuse of substances.
An interesting development in international news. A new French study has shown that dogs can detect COVID-19 in humans, paving the way for the broader use of sniffing canines in the global effort to contain the pandemic. The dog's detection reached 97% sensitivity in the French study, meaning that's how well the canines could identify positive samples. The sniffing was also 91% specific, which rates the dog's ability to identify negatives. The sensitivity rating beats that of many 15-minute antigen tests, which tend to be better at ruling out infection than at finding it. The results mean that virus-sniffing dogs could be more widely deployed in airports, train stations, or wherever crowds are massed to screen people, much like they're used for detecting drugs or bombs. Using dogs also means COVID could be identified at just a fraction of a second in a non-invasive manner and at no cost, or rather at a lower cost. The trial, which was conducted at France's National Veterinary School in Mason's Alfort near Paris, collected sweat samples from the armpits of the participants with cotton pads that were locked into jars and gave them to at least 2 different dogs for sniffing. None of the dogs had prior contact with the volunteers, and there were 335 people tested, of which 109 were positive in the PCR test that served as a control. 9 dogs participated, and the researchers didn't know which samples were positive. A record 55 million people around the world have fled their homes but not their countries and are living as internally displaced people. In its annual report, the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center says the rise can be attributed in part to conflicts in Ethiopia and Mozambique, but also to natural disasters. It warned that climate change is likely to drive displacement still higher. The center said numbers had been rising steadily over the past decade and warned that only sustained political will aimed at resolving conflict and addressing climate change can bring them down. A ceasefire in the bloody Israeli-Palestinian conflict could be imminent, possibly within 24 hours, according to Hamas officials on Wednesday, as world leaders dialed up pressure on both sides to end the fighting. Israel, however, has not commented on the possibility of a ceasefire deal. Concerns have been growing over the worsening humanitarian situation as the conflict raged for a 10th day on Wednesday, pushing the Palestinian death toll to more than 220 people, including more than 60 children, and 12 people in Israel, including 2 children. Up next is sports news. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Sports news on a Thursday. In a bid to stop corruption in sport, yesterday the SRC signed a memorandum of understanding with the National Prosecuting Authority, the NPA, which will see the SRC taking a strong stand in their fight against corruption in sport. SRC Chairman Gerard Mlochwa said this MOU will address the loopholes that are evident in the Sports Bill Act and others. It will also aid monitoring of age cheating and match fixing in sport and bring justice to those that practice these acts. South Africa A team's tour Zimbabwe will be their first visit since 2016. Both countries have named strong teams, a clear sign of the importance of this series. It comprises 4 one-day matches and 2 four-day games between May 29 and June 16 in Harare. Eagles all-rounder Brad Evans and Mountaineers leg spinner Brighton Chipingu have earned maiden call-ups to the team. South Africa have included experienced players Andile Phehlukwayo, Junior Dala and Riza Hendricks in their team. Meanwhile, South Africa women's emerging team made 297 for 5 after another century by captain Andre Steyn. Zimbabwe's chase is now on and South Africa are leading the 5 one-day series 1-0. That story in cricket brings News Blitz to a close this afternoon. Do connect with us on Twitter at ZTN News, Instagram at ZTN. Remember to like and subscribe our YouTube channel, that's ZTN, and visit our website ztn.co.zw to get in touch with more of our programming. Thanks for watching. Good afternoon.